We can remove ourselves from situations that are not healthy for us. You have a choice, even with family.
Meet Peter Sorgenfrei, a founder and CEO coach who created 6 companies across 3 countries.
For many of us, we chase wealth, title, status, not for ourselves, but for external validation.
Today, Peter coaches leaders around the world in his whole human approach, a method on which he has a book coming in 2026 called The Whole Human Leader: How to Lead Without Losing Yourself.
I found myself one morning not being able to get out of bed physically. I was afraid that it was a brain tumor or something terrible like that. But it turned out just to be stress. My first principle around work is I will never work for money. I will do something that I enjoy doing with people that I enjoy being around, and then the money will take care of itself.
Peter doesn't sugarcoat anything, and neither do I.
I was struggling for years with this concept of work-life balance. I'm known for saying work-life balance is BS.
If you ever felt like you're chasing someone else's definition of success, or if your body is sending you warning signals that you're ignoring, this episode is your wake-up call. Peter, welcome to Authority in the Wild.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure, and I'd like to dive straight into it. Labels. Why we are so driven by anything that has titles and any sort of labels we attribute ourselves with without even realizing that's a big no.
I think it's a mental shortcut, right? I mean, we live in a society where it's so used to, if you meet somebody and they say, I'm an accountant, immediately you have this idea, oh, I know what that means. I know who this person is. Similar to the snap judgment we make when we look at somebody. So I think it's a mental shortcut, essentially. That's why we like labels.
Indeed, and our brain loves shortcuts. It used to make us feel safe and so on, but it's not really the case nowadays. And in your career, when did you realize that labels were holding you back and set you on a path that you don't want to go?
Unfortunately, too late. I think I pursued labels, or I pursued status, I pursued certain things like most people for most of my early career. And then later on in life, maybe only 10 years ago, I started to understand that the label didn't define who I was, right? The fact that I was a CEO or a startup founder or the guy who employed hundreds of people, that actually didn't define who I was as a person and as a human. And I wish I had come to that discovery much earlier in life.
And why? What happened in your life in order to realize, like, all right, these labels that I'm attributing myself with are not doing me any good?
Well, for anybody listening to this, and I think you also know, in 2019, my body shut down from working, right? I found myself one morning not being able to get out of bed physically. And I've gotten to an age now, I'm 51 as of this recording, that I was afraid that it was a brain tumor or something terrible like that. But it turned out just to be stress. And as I went through this incapacitation and was sidelined for 12 weeks, I started questioning essentially everything that I'd done up until that point. How I'd led my personal life, how I'd lived my professional life, and therefore also this pursuit of more titles, more recognition, more pay, more money, all these things. So that was the turning point, essentially being so sick from this pursuit that I needed to reset and recalibrate what it meant to be me and who I was in the world.
And what exactly you were doing back then in order to arrive at that point? Because I feel like a lot of people listening or watching can resonate with the things that you were chasing or your daily routines that led to your body literally shutting down.
I can talk about this for hours, and we have 45 minutes, so I'll try and make it brief. But I think a lot of us can recognize the fact that we do a lot of things on autopilot, right? Whether it's what we eat for breakfast or the clothes that we put on, But we do the same thing in our careers. We kind of go down a path of being told you're supposed to do this, go to university or study a trade or make money and make more money. So we kind of follow this path on autopilot of going into making a living, doing something that somebody else essentially has either directly or indirectly suggested to us. And so if you do that, you end up like the frog in the pot on the stove where somebody turns on the heat. And in the beginning, you don't really notice something is wrong. By little, it feels like it's getting a little bit warm until all of a sudden the water is boiling and you're toast. And I think that happens to many people in their professional careers. The way that it comes as an expression, if you're listening to this and you're wondering, is this me? Are you sleeping well at night? Are you being short with people around you? Have you changed your habits? So, for example, you're less social than you used to be. Or maybe you need a glass of some kind of alcohol, a stimulant to wind down at the night. Maybe you need a cup of coffee to get going in the morning. Are you starting to have behaviors that are essentially telling you, hey, my body, my mind is not where it needs to be. It needs something to function. If that's the case, chances are you're in a professional situation or in a personal situation that is not serving you as well as it could.
If I listen to this and I can tick all those boxes, what can I do about it?
Well, I think the first thing is to be aware of it, right? So back to not being on autopilot. Actually, oh, wait a minute. I'm not sleeping great. Sleep is a super interesting topic. Again, we can do an entire episode on that. But I think the first thing you can do is look at your routines around sleep. Am I going to bed at a decent hour, or am I spending my time doom scrolling on TikTok, watching Netflix, hanging out with my friends? Am I sacrificing sleep for something that I actually do not need as much as I need sleep? And the answer there is nothing you need as much as sleep. So, well, maybe water, but outside of that, basically change your habits around when you go to sleep. Secondly is, how do I spend my time in bed? And this sounds a little rude to say on a podcast, but there's essentially only two things you should do in bed. One of them is sleep. The other one, I think people can figure out for themselves. Everything else happens outside of the bedroom. So create a space where your body knows when I go in here, I'm sleeping or I'm doing this other thing with the partner in my life, right? So that's what you need to do first. Secondly, if you're waking in the middle of the night and your mind is racing and you're thinking about something, start paying attention to what is it that I'm thinking about? Is it work? Is it something personal? Am I thinking about the past? Am I worrying about the future? What is it that's happening in my brain when it wakes up during the night? And then say to yourself, can I do something about this? Right? The short answer is most things you cannot do anything about. So worrying about them or thinking about them actually doesn't serve you well. But the things you can do something about, the assignment becomes the next day, start doing something about that. Is it a hard conversation you need to have with somebody? Is it a boundary you need to set? Is it something that you need to execute on that you keep pushing in front of you? What is it? Start doing that the following day.
And those in theory are quite simple things, right? Like changing your sleeping patterns and the habits that you have in your dormitory, especially because in theory it's so simple, right? Just leave devices out. Don't bring any type of technology in your bedroom. And still, a lot of people, like you mentioned, take their devices to wind down or their glass of wine or anything else that allows them to quote unquote sleep better. But in reality, it's just adding weight to the struggles they are already facing. But if someone is already taking care of that, they have a healthy sleep patterns, they are aware of the issues that are facing in their life and business, and they have those hard conversations, they take care of the things they should take care of, and still are on a path that it's a path of chasing more, chasing titles, chasing money, chasing all these material things that at the end of the day doesn't matter that much. How they can truly dig deeper and change their path towards one that not only fulfills them, but make them healthier and happier at the end of the day.
Again, big topic. I'm loving this conversation so far. I think it's asking yourself, what are my values and what do I care about? For many of us, we chase wealth, title, status, not for ourselves, but for external validation, right? I need my neighbor to see that I'm driving a new car, or I need my friends to see that I'm wearing an expensive watch or whatever it is. Rarely do the things that drive us actually matter to us if we see them in an isolated way, right? Yes, it's nice to go on a nice vacation, but at the end of life, when we ask people what really mattered to you, it's time spent with our loved ones. That's number one. No matter whether you're sitting in a tent or in a 5-star resort in the Maldives, it does not matter. So I would start asking myself, what are my values? And why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Am I doing it for myself or am I doing it for somebody else? And what you'll learn quite quickly is the vast majority of the things that you worry about and that you obsess about have nothing to do with what actually makes you personally happy. And then you go down a path of saying, all right, if I strip away all this stuff, what do I need in my life? What do I want to spend my time doing? And then you find ways to do more of that. You maybe adjust your lifestyle. A lot of people get caught up in, I was there, living in a very expensive apartment in New York City. I was like, well, do I actually need to live in this very expensive apartment? Or is another apartment just as good? And of course, another apartment is just as fine as long as you have your basic needs covered, right? So you can make choices, you can make adjustments to your lifestyle, you can make adjustments to the work that you pursue, and then you need to start making those.
Absolutely, because when your actions are aligned with your values, it's much more easier to not only make decisions, but as well to not feel overwhelmed by all the opinions of others, by all the pressure that society is putting upon us. And still, we are affected by it, and sometimes without even realizing it. And just by being active in communities or in society as a whole, the pressure often comes subconsciously or in a way that we find ourselves taking some sort of actions that we don't truly align with our values or that we don't truly want, but we're still doing it. And sometimes it even comes for very close circles like family or loved ones and so on. How we deal with that?
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound easy as we're sitting here. It's definitely not easy, but it gets easier with time. It's kind of like anything new you need to learn. In the beginning, seems impossible, seems difficult. You manage. All of a sudden, you're like, running a marathon, that's boring, right? And then you do something. So the family thing is really tricky. A lot of the clients that I have, so I'm a coach to founder CEOs globally, clients in 13 countries or so, 57 or so clients over the last 5 years. And everybody I meet have had some kind of a family challenge, a relationship with a sibling that is fraught or difficult, expectations from parents that people have struggled to live up to or are affected by trying to live up to. And the only way you can deal with that, unfortunately, is to talk to somebody about how to deal with it, right? Doing it on your own is not going to change the pattern that you have had potentially since childhood. So in many cases, either a trained psychologist or a good friend or a coach can help you talk through, what is it that's happening here? Why is it that I have such a hard time dealing with my dad's constant expectations and the way that he dismisses my successes when I'm so proud of the thing that I've built as an adult, for example. And again, it sounds simple, but it comes down to there was something that we didn't get when we were children. right? We were either told when we came home with our grades, why weren't you first in class? Or our parents were absent because they were doing other things and we needed their attention. So we're trying to get more and more of their attention as an adult. And once you kind of go back in that path and kind of realize, where does this come from? Then you can relate better to it in the present by being like, all right, the reason I get upset when we have to go to a family dinner is because I know inside, subconsciously, that I'm not going to get the validation from my dad that I so desperately want. So I know that's why I actually don't like going to dinner with him. Now that I know that, I can decide, am I going to address it with him and saying, hey, Dad, I actually need you to be proud of me and tell me that you're proud of me? Or can I just let it slide by being like, he will not, he has not, he will never give me the validation that I need. So long answer here, Gabe, but it's to say, figure out why it's happening through conversation with somebody, understand your perspective on whether or not the situation can change, understand whether or not you can live with it not changing. And if you can, great. If you can't, either do something about it with the person that is affecting you, or, and this is going to sound incredibly harsh, avoid the person, right? We can remove ourselves from situations that are not healthy for us. I'm not suggesting anybody abandons their family members. I'm just saying you have a choice, even with family.
Absolutely. And I went through this type of experiences, I think, a few years ago, 5 years or something, with some friends that I was avoiding saying yes to their invites, either to go out or do other stuff. And I wasn't realizing at first why is that happening. And when I did realize, I was like, oh, okay, I'm avoiding this hard conversation with them. They have different values, different paths in life. I have another, and so on. And once I realized that, I try to talk to them. And I even try to convince them about my values and what I want to do. And slowly I realized that I shouldn't do that. Like, I shouldn't convince someone about my values and for them to accept them. If they accept them, it's okay. If not, it's their own choice. And we just spend then less and less time together until that relationship basically turned out into a no relationship, and was one of the best things that I ever do for my self improvement, my growth in life, in business, and so on. Because this type of people often bring us down without realizing, and are hard conversation because sometimes you spend years with these people around you, either it's family members or close friends, and it's hard to let go, but is needed, unfortunately. And same with
And I think
family.
the friend example is a really good one. It is very rare to go through life with people who will be alongside you on the entire journey, because we grow in different ways, right? We get different interests. We might geographically be dispersed. There might be these things that are happening. So the expectation that we, from when we're children until when we're adults, will have the same circle of friends and the same circle of influence is misplaced. Of course, some of us will have friends that we've known from when we were children, but I think it's more the exception than the rule. Again, back to the experience in the last 5 years coaching all these people, the vast majority of them, again, have had to shed relationships along the way. The people I work with are founders and builders of companies. A lot of people actually are threatened by that. They're like, oh, what do you mean you're not going to be an accountant at a big accountant firm? What do you mean you want to pursue your passion of, selling summer dresses? That's crazy. And then as people do that and they become successful at it, there's this envy that happens in their old circle of friends, or this questioning constantly, like, why are you working all the time? Why don't you take some time off? And the founder sometimes says, well, actually, I enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy pursuing my passion. And if you can't be with me in that, and evolve with me in that, then maybe we shouldn't hang out as much.
And on that note, because often, both in my personal life and as well in our close friends, I see this pattern in which one of the members in that couple and so on is a founder. The other is a full-time employee. And often, yes, the schedule is different. The amount of work they put in is different, and friction appears and relationship breaks. And I think twice in my life, the relationship broke, like personal relationship, because of that. Luckily now we are both implicated in the same company, both me and my wife, and it's much more easier to deal with that. But I see my friends, I see clients struggling with this because, yeah, schedule not aligning, pursuit not aligning, and so on. Is there any solution to that, or do you think?
Yeah, there definitely is a solution, and the solution is dialogue and expectations, right? So I think what happens in some people, at least, they become partners and a couple when they are doing the same thing. They might meet each other at university or at school, or they might meet each other at a business, or they might meet each other while they're both young professionals working for somebody else. And at the time, everything is great, everybody is in love, and then one person says, I actually want to pursue my passion and start a business. And person number two says, that sounds amazing. I love you, honey. Go do you. I'll support you. And then the founder is starting this, and they're going to go through what every founder goes through. It's going to seem easy. They're going to have some success. They're going to fail. It's going to be horrible. They're going to go up and down, up and down. Nobody succeeds in a straight line. And along the way, the person who's not on that journey is going to support them and be there for them, but also, of course, because they love each other, have this feeling of, oh, my partner is struggling. Why doesn't, I'm going to use he as an example, why doesn't he just go back to a job where he's not going to struggle, where it's not going to be difficult? Or why doesn't he go back to a job where he's not stressed out and comes home and is frustrated with something and it affects our relationship? So it's not because they don't support the person's passion and pursuit. It's because they wish that things would remain the way they were when times get tough. And so it is about having a dialogue. So, as a personal example, my girlfriend works for a big corporate. And we have very clear conversations about when she has a super busy schedule and she's traveling all over the world, or when I'm doing something that requires me to be less present and physically available in our joint home. But we talk about it. And we're like, hey, I'm writing a book currently. It's going to be delivered to the publisher in December. So when that deal happened in March, I talked to her about it and said, listen, this is going to be a major undertaking for me. Is it okay if I take a little bit of a time out from some of our joint chores and activities? If you kind of drive the bus on the home stuff for a period of time? And she says, absolutely. I love you. I support you. It's going to be amazing. Don't worry. I got this. And then we continue to talk about it because some days she still, of course, says, oh, you're working all the time again. And I'm like, I know. And I don't say, but we talked about it. You gave me permission. I said, thank you, honey. I appreciate that. Why don't we connect again? And then we have time together, and then I can go back to being fully focused on the business. And I'm not doing it for her sake. I'm doing it for mine. Because of course I want that relationship to last for the rest of my life. So it's a long answer and a long way of saying people opine against your focus from a place of love and care. But if you turn into the founder who's stressed and unpleasant and disrespectful and don't communicate with your partner, it's on you. And that, unfortunately, is most often what happens. Most founders I meet in my practice are people who've gotten out to a place where they're not who they're supposed to be. They're not who they want to be. And their partner at home is raising the flag and saying, buddy, you better fix this because otherwise I'm not along for the ride.
Yeah, and often with that lack of dialogue, it ends up in that situation where one of the partners raised the flag and they put almost a deadline or something in place to
Yeah, it becomes an
fix this or
ultimatum, right? Which nobody likes, right? It's like putting a gun to your head and saying, Gabe, unless you stop doing your startup, I'm leaving. Well, that doesn't work, because then you retreat and be like, nobody's going to tell me what to do. So it's back to saying, hey, I want us to have a different kind of dynamic. How can we look at that together? Not you're doing this, which is wrong. I want that. And I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you there, but the main point here is talk to each other, right? It ain't that hard. If something's on your mind, don't do it when you're frustrated. Sit your partner down, write it down, something, and saying, hey, I'm experiencing this. I'd love things to be different. Can we figure it out together?
Absolutely. I love your example when your book deal appearing in the picture, because often if we ask ourselves, like, is this yes that I'm saying to any sort of opportunity gonna affect in any way my availability or any sort of commitments that I currently have? Just through that awareness, we can prepare ourselves and already start putting in our to-do list, like, I should have a conversation with my partner, or I should have a conversation with my co-founder or whatever, in order to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And because that can prepare us and avoid the things that the uncomfortable conversations. And speaking of your book, if I remember correctly, I think it's called The Whole Human Leader. And you mentioned that you're gonna send it to your publisher in December. When you're gonna be released?
So the release date is August 9th, 2026. So 11 months from now. And it's going to be published globally, which is really exciting. And hopefully it'll help a lot of leaders remember themselves and lead as whole humans, rather than becoming something that they don't want to be.
What's a whole human concept?
A whole human is somebody who remains true to who they are, whether they are at home or at work. I think this work started 5 years ago, when I realized that we're not two different people. I'm not professional Peter and personal Peter, right? And I was struggling for years with this concept of work-life balance. I'm known for saying work-life balance is BS, and I hope that's not swearing on your podcast. But essentially, the idea is we cannot balance these two things, because that actually indicates that they are at odds with each other. If one is high, the other one has to be low, and if one is low, the other one has to be high. It's more about work-life integration. So a whole human is an individual who is able to stay true to who they are, regardless of whether they are in their home with their family or at work with their colleagues. And in order to do that, you need to know who you are, right? You need to fully understand, who am I, Gabe, in this world, in this context, and who do I want to be? And if those two things are not aligned, you go back to who am I? And then you try to be that person, both when you're at work and when you're at home. So a lot of it comes down to having the moment to self-reflect, figuring out what your values are, and then see how you can live those both at home and in the office.
Easy to say, right? And
Yeah,
still, most people
it's
struggle with that. Like,
no, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think it's a struggle, really. I think most of us didn't ask ourselves that question, right? If I sat you down and I said, who's Gabe? You'd say something like, he's a guy who acts with integrity. He is loyal. He takes care of others, right? You'd use potentially you'd use language like that. And then I'd ask you, your situation is a little bit different, but let's say you were an executive at some company, and I'd say, are you leading with integrity at work? Or are you doing things that where you sometimes like, ooh, that's probably not what I should be doing, but it's expected of my bosses, or that's what the company policy is, or whatever it is, right? And if you have too many of those, where there's a disconnect between who you are, what your values are, and how you are either asked to operate or how you choose to operate because of the context you're in, that's when you have an issue. And then you're like, either I need to get the context to change job, tell the bosses that they're wrong in screwing over the customers, whatever it is, and face the consequences if they don't like what they're hearing, or you need to question who you think you are. Am I really the person with integrity, or am I okay with lowering my standards in certain aspects of my life? That conversation is easy to have. Acting on it is the hard part.
Indeed, and even with the conversation. So personally, I used to struggle a lot with this, like having these alone moments in which to self-reflect, to ask me difficult questions, and sometimes easy questions that I was staying for like 20 minutes to half an hour to answer, and then realizing like, wait a second, I should not overthink this because I know that this is that. And when in this busy world in which, especially if you are a leader and you have so much on your plate, how we should go about it in order to have those alone moments, to have those conversations with ourselves? How did you went on that moment?
Well, I think my situation was a little bit unique because of the sickness that I experienced and kind of a forced reset, right? Basically, Mother Nature said, buddy, you're going to be lying down for 12 weeks. You'll have plenty of plenty of time to think. But I'll tell you what I tell people that feel like they're too busy to have those alone moments. I ask them to show me their calendar. And in the vast majority of the cases, I can reduce the time they spend on stuff by 30%. Meetings that they're attending, relationships that they're nurturing that they actually don't get any value out of or don't want to do, whatever it is, we can quickly find time in this very packed calendar. We can also just stop watching Netflix for a few minutes. There's some time, right? So that's number one. Let's revisit, how do you actually spend your time, and what is it that makes you feel like you're so busy? It's probably because you're saying yes to things you shouldn't say yes to, or participating in activities that are not necessary for you to participate in. And once we have that, then I essentially prescribe 30 minutes every single day by yourself without any input. So that means no music, no screens, no physical book, ideally outside. So find a bench on your way to work. If you're driving to work, park somewhere and step out of the car and just observe what's happening around you. Feel the air on your skin, see what you can see, hear what you can hear, scents, smells, things coming at you. Just observe what that is. And if you start doing that, 30 minutes for a lot of people sounds like an eternity. It's not, but that's what's prescribed. They start doing that, and little by little, what they experience is their mind starts slowing down. It starts not racing so much at night. It starts being able to reflect and respond instead of reacting when something happens. And once they've had that experience, and it happens quite quickly, it happens within a few days in most cases, then they're like, wait a minute, why don't I want to do this every day? This is delicious. This is great. Let me do more of it. And then it becomes a habit, and then they see the benefits in the rest of their life.
Absolutely, because having those moments, especially as you mentioned, outside, not being distracted by technology or even a notebook that often. So when I had those reflective moments, I was taking like a notebook with me. I was like, oh, I'll just write down the ideas that come through my mind and so on. But just by sitting there with the pencil in my hand, I was overthinking things. I wasn't paying attention to what's happening around me or to my thoughts, actually. I was just having this task of writing something down instead of reflecting or being disconnected and not affected by our beautiful mind, but sometimes a mind that it's derailing us. And speaking of mind, like in this whole human concept, like how much is our subconscious affecting the reality that we put into practice?
Well, this could be a very philosophical conversation quite quickly, right? Because you're saying affecting the reality. What is reality, right? Is it what we're thinking that is happening, or what is actually happening? And so I'll quote my favorite Stoic, a not so young man anymore named Epictetus. And he said essentially there are two things that we can control, or indirectly, two things we can affect, to answer your question. Number one is our actions. What am I actually doing in this moment? I'm lifting up a pen. I'm taking my water bottle. That is real as can be, right? And the other thing that we can control or affect is how we relate to our thoughts, not our actual thoughts. I can't control what happens up here. I might be thinking about needing to go to the grocery store later. That's a thought. But whether or not I decide to focus on it and kind of grab it and work with it and say, oh, I don't want to go to the grocery store. It's my girlfriend's turn. Whatever it is that comes up here, that's a choice. How I relate to what happens, right? So I think the thing that we do on a day-to-day basis is we spend a lot of time in our mind believing that that's reality, believing that what we're thinking is real. It's not. It is just a thought. And once you realize that it's just a thought, it becomes much easier to start thinking about, okay, what can I actually do? My grocery example. I don't want to go to the grocery store. It's annoying. A lot of people, this, that, and the other. It's my girlfriend's trip to turn, right? Let's say. She might be listening, so I shouldn't say this too loudly. But let's say that's the thought that I had. The thing I can do about it is actually, maybe the supermarket's not going to be that bad because I might get there before the evening rush. Or actually, maybe I should go with her so that we have the experience together, and that's more enjoyable than going by myself or forcing her to go because I think it's her turn. And by the way, why do I think it's her turn? Is it actually something that we keep track of? Or is it because there's something else that I'm missing in our relationship, or that I feel like I'm doing more of, whatever it is? Now I'm taking action on a thought, which is not reality, to improve my situation and improve my relationship and improve my feeling of self. Do you see the difference? That we can all do. Essentially, how do I relate to what's happening up here? What am I going to do about it?
And often those actions are determined as well by the principles that we are guided by. And I'd love to ask you about yours, since a lot of people look at step-by-step processes, frameworks, but I think principles might be way more important than those.
So, if I understand your question correctly, I discovered many years ago that one of my principles in my sort of the professional sphere was I was never going to work for money again. That became a principle to me at an early age. I shifted jobs to make a lot of money. I worked on Wall Street at an investment bank called UBS. I only took that job because of the money and the prestige. I was happy where I was. Wasn't dissatisfied, but I was like, oh, make a lot of money, big brand, big title, all that stuff. I was miserable. I didn't enjoy the work. I didn't necessarily enjoy all the colleagues. I didn't enjoy the hours. I didn't enjoy anything about it. And so back then I formed my first principle around work, which is I will never work for money. I will do something that I enjoy doing with people that I enjoy being around, and then the money will take care of itself. I created this idea, this belief, and then I started pursuing that. And what that means is I probably made less money than I could. I don't have Porsches and private planes and all sorts of other stuff. But that was because of the choices that I made of how I wanted to do what I wanted to do. That's not right for everybody. It was right for me. So that's principle number one. Principle number two is I have a son. I want to be a good dad, right? So when I make choices about how I spend my time, where I focus my efforts, how I deal with him, it's from I want to be a good dad, not for his sake, for my sake, so that I don't have any regrets when I'm on my deathbed where I'm like, shoot, I should have spent more time with him. I should have been more available to him. I should have raised him differently. All these other things that people report when they're dying is something that they regret. I don't want to have those regrets. So, and then the third thing, and these are not necessarily in prioritized order, they're just the way that I'm thinking about him as we're talking about it. And the third thing is, I want to stay true to who I am. So I will reject things that are proposed to me. I get offered all the time to do sponsorship deals of some sort. Again, I don't want to do anything for the money. And I say no because it doesn't feel right for me to tell you, hey, use this software and your life will get better. That's not what I'm about. Somebody else might be. That's fine. But it also means that I will have tough conversations with people. So if my friends or family are not, if we're not aligned on how we're going to be together, I will engage them in that conversation because that is staying true to who I am and what I preach. And if they don't want to have that conversation, if they don't respond well to that conversation, I'm ready to deal with the consequences. Doesn't mean it has to be my way or the highway. It's not about ego. It's just I know if I'm trying to be something I'm not, it's not good for me. And if it's not good for me, then I can't be good to others, right? Then I can't be the best partner to my girlfriend. I can't be the good dad that I talked about. And I can't contribute to society through the work I do with my clients.
And when you do say yes, who are they? Who are the people that you help the best?
So if we're talking about clients, a couple of things need to be present. One, they need to understand that I require them to do the work, right? I'm not the kind of coach where they sit and talk for an hour and I say things like, how does that make you feel? What do you think about that? I give them homework. I require them to change their behaviors in order to get different outcomes. So I preface every client engagement with saying, I love it that you want to work with me, but if you don't do the work, I'm going to tell you to please get out of my store, right? And that's a new feeling, and folks have to get used to that to begin with. So that's professionally speaking. They will have to do the work. In my personal life, I'm thankful that I have a circle of friends and I have family with whom I can talk about anything. There is no topic that I cannot bring up and they don't meet me in it, right? So whether it's personal insecurities, whether I did something wrong or stupid, I know that the people that are in my life will listen, will be curious, will explore it with me, will give me advice, but I'm not going to be ridiculed and I'm not going to be judged if I did something that maybe wasn't the best idea to begin with. So I feel very safe, right? There's a lot of psychological safety in my life, and there didn't used to be, but I decided that was required, and so I sought out people who would give me that.
And that's the thing that I wanted to say, that you didn't arrive here by chance. You made those tough decisions to saying no to certain friends or old friends and potential deals like the sponsorships that you mentioned, and not difficult, like unaligned potential clients and so on. And often it's I won't say it's all it takes to arrive there, but it's a huge step to learning to say that no to those distractions that are like portrayed as opportunities or as something else. And if those listening resonate with that and it's like, Peter is the man that I want to work with in order to take me to the next level or to truly understand me as a human and be a better leader, where they can contact you.
Thankfully, I have an unusual last name. So the simplest thing is to Google Peter Sorgenfrei, and I'm sure it'll be in the show notes or elsewhere. And there are two of us in the world with that name, and one of them is a journalist. That's not the guy. The guy that says he's a coach. Get in contact on petersorgenfrei.com or on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much anywhere and everywhere now. But before you do, know that this is different, right? It's a different experience than speaking to a regular therapist. Working with me means that you know that something needs to change and you're ready, willing, and able to do the work required. And my guarantee back to you is give me 3 months. And if you're not in a much better place than you were when we started, I'll refund you my entire fee.
I love that positioning. And I'd like to conclude with something that, and first of all, for those listening and watching, make sure to check the show notes because the links as well to Peter's website and LinkedIn will be there. I want to conclude with something. If someone is almost there, almost ready to work with you, what they should do in order to be ready and for that change in their behavior, in putting the work and do the homework in order to change their life?
So most people are not in doubt whether they're ready or not. I would say if you are just experiencing a little bit of sleep trouble, if you are generally okay with what you do professionally, if you are generally okay with your relationships, it's okay to be dissatisfied. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be stressed, whatever that exactly means for you. But if generally things are all right, maybe it's just a phase. But if you over a period of time have been struggling with your relationships, either your current ones or previous ones, if you're not sleeping soundly at night, if you're being short with people, if you don't like what you do for a living, I would start with sitting down by myself with a blank sheet of paper, start writing down, who am I? What do I believe in? What do I want my life to look like? And then if you can make that happen, if you understand who you are, if you know what your life should be like and you can make those changes, try. Are you willing to shed those friends? Are you ready to have a tough conversation with your partner? Will you be met in that conversation? Can you have that conversation together? Or is your relationship not at that point? Those are the things you need to test out before you phone me up.
This was Peter Sorgenfrei on Authority in the Wild. Thank you so much for tuning in.